Mr. Chairman, thank you very, very much, and I'm amazed by the number of people who are here tonight. I've addressed many a Conservative gathering in my time, and I don't think it was ever as big as this, except for one unfortunate occasion, because one has to admit one's sins of omission and commission. And I was only 22 at the time when I was the introducer of Ted Heath at a pro-Euro rally. I think it's better to tell the truth, which most of our politicians in the mainstream do, not rather than pretend that the case is different. Now, it is very reasonable in any organisation which started as quite a small organisation, for its founding members to ask, hey, well, why have you joined us? Because I've only been a member for 5 or 6 months. Well, I can give you basically 3 answers. The first is a rip-off on Ronald Reagan, who was the head of a trades union, which was the Screen Actors Guild. When a journalist asked him why he left the Democrat Party, he said, I never left the Democrats, they left me. And I didn't leave the Conservatives, they left me. And regrets. He wasn't very big, but he had a great voice, and he came from New Jersey. Regrets, I have a few, but I have one actually, which is that I didn't join this party earlier. That's not to say that I wasn't immensely proud to work under Margaret Thatcher. But I knew things were changing for the worse when I received a call from Number 10 when I was Chief Whip in the Lords, saying that Gus O'Donnell wanted to come and see me, who was the private secretary. And all the newspapers that day had pictures of the Prime Minister's underpants shown. Which is, I mean, what's wrong with that? I would appear to become a nationalist as far as Number 10 were concerned. And Mr. O'Donnell turned up in my office to ask my advice, because it was thought that I was the best dressed member of the Palace of Westminster. Don't take that as a compliment. Just shows how badly the rest were dressed. However, when I read in my paper today that it's now seriously proposed that a man who cannot make a decision about the Prime Minister's underpants showing or not has to go and ask for advice is being proposed as the next head of the Bank of England, I begin to have my doubts about those who are in charge of our authorities. And that is another reason for being a member. I'm also a member because I have seen in my lifetime this country lose all of its power of the judiciary, lose all of the power of its government to make any decision that cannot be overruled by an authority based and so-called represented in the European Parliament, which we will forever be a smaller minority than the Conservative Party in the Republic of Ireland. That's the only way I can put it. But that is the truth. And if we are going to retain democracy, it's already gone from Greece, it's gone from Italy, and it may well now go from Holland as of today, when they call their next election. Now, I'm speaking tonight about defence, and there's 2 reasons for that. I'm very honoured when Nigel asked me to be the defence spokesman. I have spent quite a lot of time in defence. I was the Minister of State for Industry, which covered defence. When I was at the DTI, I was a director of Babcock's and deputy chairman for 14 years, and I was a director of British Aerospace for 9 years. So I've been on both sides I've seen very poor practice on both sides of the fence. And as some of you tonight will be aware, I resigned as Deputy Chairman of Babcock's, which includes the dockyard here in Plymouth. Nothing to do with the company. It's a fantastic company, and the people who work for it are fantastic. I resigned because the government, starting with Gordon Brown and continuing with this government, have no policy on the aircraft carrier programme, which is the single biggest capital spend that we have to defend this country. And there is no town better suited to talk about it than here in Plymouth. Because if you look at this town, you look at this hall bears the scars. That's why it all had to be rebuilt. This hall bears the scars of why we have to have a defence policy. The whole of the centre of this town had to be rebuilt. You can see it just by driving around it. And I've driven around it many times in the years that I came down here to attend board meetings in the dockyard. This town is a very good reason to believe in the defence of a maritime power. We also face the fact that we may shortly have an independent Scotland, which is demanding to be nuclear-free, is demanding that Trident is removed, that the hunter-killer submarines are removed, that anything that's got anything to do with the atom is removed from Scotland. There are only 2 major naval bases outside of Scotland equipped to deal with these matters. Number 1 is right here in Plymouth, and number 2 is Portsmouth, where British Aerospace, who I think they need some kind of medical treatment, probably on a psychiatrist's chair, so that they thought they'd close that before they closed the yard in Scotland, which, frankly, I think more bad news should be given both to the board and the chairman, and hope that they calm down and actually think. The reality is this, that UKIP has made a big move forward. Nigel wishes us to have views that are not only about restoring our national credibility, restoring the power of the British people to rule themselves in the way that they wish to be ruled. And that is not a decision for me to take, that is a decision that will be taken by the British people. But at least they must have that right, and that right is steadily eroding. At the same time, we have a defence policy which is based entirely on myth. Now, many of you here will know of small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, work for small businesses, work for medium businesses, work for large businesses. And you all know what it means if the business is bankrupt. Now, in the Ministry of Defence, when I was in the government, I discovered a wonderful word. It was called bow wave. And what bow wave is the difference between the amount of money in the budget and how much they're going to spend. Officially, that number is £38 billion. Unofficially, it's pushing £50 billion. So that's roughly £1,000 for every man, woman and child in this country unfunded. Now, yesterday's Times quite happily said the Navy now want to have a maritime patrol craft. I think most of the people in this audience will remember that only a few months ago we saw several £billion worth of brand new, ready to be delivered Nimrod aircraft being smashed to smithereens in full view of the public by JCBs in Lancashire. It's an absolute public outrage. It's a public scandal, and it costs every single saver, pensioner, employee and future pensioner a slice of what they have paid into, are paying into and deserve. It's a scandal, and it exists throughout the service, throughout the public sector. I'll give you an example. There's a thing called a change order. Now, if you speak to a member of the armed services at the very top, or the civil service, and they're all fighting, I might tell you, all day long, because the inter-service rivalry is one of the reasons this carrier program is a disaster, because the Navy are obsessed, the RAF are trying to take it over and vice versa. And so the actual real issues never get discussed. A change order means when you sign a contract in any ordinary business and you change the order, the contract's null and void and you have to renegotiate it. So, an admiral goes into the Admiral Nelson, has a light refreshment, says, oh, I don't like the colour of the conning tower, or I don't like the way the deck's laid out, or I don't like the way my cabin's been done, and tells the shipyard this has all got to be changed, and bingo. Price of ship rises by 25 million. Contract has been negated, which is why the contractor always bid too low, because he relied on the insanity of the ordering process to guarantee his profit. He's not a crook, he just knew that he was dealing with buffoons. This is where the change has to come, and it has to come fast, because I can assure you that in the review that is being done now by UKIP, we can actually have a stronger armed forces, a stronger navy, a more powerful ability to defend our interests and to face up to the biggest issue which nobody wants to talk about, which is Trident replacement, which we may not be able to afford, and we may have to look at an alternative. Because that bill, forget the ones I've already told you, is probably already hitting 40 billion. So let us be realistic and let us defend a maritime nation. We're not going to go and have a war with Russia. We're not going to go and have a full frontal assault on China, because I can tell you the result of both, and they wouldn't be very satisfactory for anyone in this room or on these islands. But what we certainly can do is have a credible deterrent, a credible armed forces, and a stronger armed forces. Let me give you an example. Up the road at Bristol, just outside Bristol, no less than 25,000 people are employed in defence procurement. Now, if you apply that to the ships, that means there's about 5 times as many people employed in defence procurement on the ships than there are sailors to bloody well sail them. I mean, this is a land where Noddy is in charge. Not someone who knows what they're talking about. Anyway, the great thing is UKIP has plans not only that you will know about for Europe, which is hugely important, because without our freedom we can't have a defence policy. I would, because I do have a house in the south of France, and I did have the privilege of watching the Charles de Gaulle, which we were all told was going to be this wonderful carrier which we could land our aeroplanes on. Well, the French pilots have to be so small to get into them that we've had to select very special small pilots from the RAF to go and fly on them. But that's the ship's working, because I watched it sailed right past my house, and it went all the way from Toulon to Villefranche, which I suppose is maybe maximum 75 miles, 100 miles on a good day, and its propeller fell off in the harbour. And so, well, that's why I've never really bought a Citroen, I suppose, is the answer to that one. But the reality is that during the Libyan recent kerfuffle, the Charles de Gaulle had to be brought back to Toulon because it rode too much in the Mediterranean, so they couldn't fly off it. Now, I mean, the Mediterranean can get quite stormy, But I'd be very interested to see what happens to the Charlotte de Gaulle if we say, well, it's our turn to use it, and it's sent out into the Channel and off to the North Atlantic, and sees 50 feet of green sea coming over the front of it. I think we'd be very lucky to get anything off it, apart from a postcard you throw into a bottle. So the reality of all of this is that we have to fight and fight and fight. We have to fight at the local election, we have to fight in the European elections, we have to fight in the general election, because the establishment sits in London. I've worked with them. I was in the government for 7 years. I was involved with them through industry for another 15 years. And it is a club which is based on self-promotion. It doesn't know where Plymouth is, I can assure you that. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's the leader of the Labour Party or the leader of any other party. The only thing which I can bring you today, just for light amusement, because of the insincerity, is I discovered this morning that Mr. Clegg's father is the director of the Tata Bank, which is the Indian family who own Range Rover, but their head office happens to be in Bahrain. So the question is, what was Mr. Clegg complaining about when his father, about the Bahrain Grand Prix, when his father is clearly, and I don't believe there's much tax to pay in Bahrain, is a director of a Bahraini company collecting handsomely every time he passes go at the boardroom. Of course, this is, oh, I don't want to talk about that. No. I only want my Prime Minister, my Deputy Prime Ministerial salary review. I don't want anyone to know that my wife gets 750 grand a year working, raised from 500 when he became Deputy Prime Minister, and advised Kraft when they raped Cadbury. That's, oh no, we can't have that in the public domain. That's all private. But I think we need a little bit more about Mr. Clegg's arrangements and his family's arrangements and his trust funds and what's been laid up for his children and where they're based and who they're going to be paid to and are they ever going to go anywhere near Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. I think I can give you the answer to all of them, which is no, 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 and no. Following my mother's advice, having said that, never bore your audience. It's been an honour and privilege to be here. The great man is here to speak to you. I just want to say one word of thanks to the charming lady who arranged for a buttonhole, both for myself and for Nigel, in order to enhance the proceedings. Thank you all very, very much indeed.